بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك وعلمنا من لدنك علما ينفعنا في الدين والدنيا يا كريم. Praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah ta'ala, we start our 10th dars in explaining the mukhtasar of the Imam Abu Shujā al-Asbahani rahimahullah ta'ala arba. And inshallah we'll just take a screenshot of the attendance in Zoom. And everyone here, I know the names inshallah, so we won't call out the names on the one inshallah ta'ala. So alhamdulillah, we have reached what is known as Babu Salat al-Jama'ah. So usually towards the end of the Salah, the scholars write a chapter talking about the rulings of Jama'ah, of praying in congregation, because praying in congregation has a lot of different rulings than normal Salah. Some of these rulings are to do with the Imam, and some of them are to do with the follower of the Imam. So, and also some cases it's compulsory for us to have Jama'ah for a Salah like Jum'ah. You can't pray it alone. Some other Salat don't need Jama'ah. So there's so many rulings to go into. Also, sometimes Imam can recite Fatiha for you. If you make ruku' and Imam's already there, is in ruku', you just enter ruku' without reading Fatiha. So there's certain rulings that are different than normal Salah. So there's a whole entire chapter in fiqh known as the chapter of Jama'ah or congregational prayer. Then after that they talk about Jumu'ah, usually in fiqh. So Imam Abu Shujā rahimahullah ta'ala says, فَصْلٌ وَصَلَاةُ جَمَاعَةِ سُنَّةٌ مُؤَكَّدَةٌ وَعَلَى الْمَأْمُومِ أن ينوي الائتمام دون الإمام، ويجوز أن يأتم الحر بالعبد والبالغ بالمراهق، ولا تصح قدوة رجل بامرأة ولا قارئ بأمي. وأي موضع صلى في المسجد بصلاة الإمام فيه وهو عالم بصلاته أجزأه ما لم يتقدم عليه، وإن صلى في المسجد والمأموم خارج المسجد قريبا منه وهو عالم بصلاته ولا حائل هناك جاز.
Congregational prayer is an emphasized sunnah, mu'akkada. Followers must intend to follow, but it is not required that the imam intend to lead. It is permissible and valid for someone who is free to be led by a slave, and for one who is mature to pray behind an adolescent. It is not valid for a male to be led by a female, nor for one who reads Al-Fatiha correctly to be led by someone who does not. Wherever one prays in a mosque behind the imam while aware of the imam's prayer, the prayer suffices, provided one does not advance closer to the direction of prayer than his imam. If the imam prays inside a mosque and the follower prays behind and close outside, it is permissible provided that the follower is aware of the imam's prayer and there is no barrier between them.
Okay, so we said that we're going to talk about congregational prayer, Jama'ah. What is Salat al-Jama'ah? What's the definition of Salat al-Jama'ah, congregational prayer? Basically, before we talk about definition, congregational prayer is when a type of basically attachment happens between two different salah. The salah of someone and the salah of someone else. This is called Jama'ah. When there's an attachment between two different prayers, it's a congregational prayer. So, of course, for us to have an attachment, there has to be an intention. Once you intend, then your prayer as a follower becomes attached to the imam's prayer straight away, even if the imam doesn't intend. So the attachment between two prayers is the definition of Salat Jama'ah. That's what we mean when we say that the scholars in Arabic, they say irtibatu salatu ma'mumin bi imam. Yeah, attachment of the follower in his prayer to the imam. So definition, the closest translation I could come up with is that it is the connection of the ma'mum, the follower's prayer, to the prayer of the imam, whether the imam intends jama'ah or not. Whether the imam intends jama'ah or not. So the connection happens from the follower. The imam doesn't need to intend anything. Once you intend to follow someone, it's Jama'ah. If the imam wants to get the reward of Jama'ah, of course he needs to intend. But you as a follower, you can get the reward without the imam intending. And this means that the minimum number of Jama'ah is how many? 2 people. Jama'ah can't be done with less than 2 people. whether it's a man and a lady, or two men or two ladies, Jama'ah can be done with two people. As long as one person intends to follow another, it becomes congregational prayer. Now, the author, if we go back, he says that Salatul Jama'ah sunnatun mu'akkada. He says the ruling of Jama'ah. Okay, and of course we're talking about males. Do males have to pray Jama'ah for the 5 daily prayers or not? The author, Abu Shujā, says, وَصَلَاةُ الْجَمَاعَةِ سُنَّةٌ مُؤَكَّدَةٌ means it's an emphasized sunnah, an extra important sunnah, okay? That is the opinion of Imam Abu Shujā and a lot of the earlier scholars in the Shafi'i madhab, although the famous opinion, the opinion of Imam Nawawi and the ones after him, is that Jama'ah is fard kifaya. Means it's compulsory on the general public, but not compulsory on every single individual. So not every Muslim man has to go to the mosque 5 times a day and pray the prayer. Nor do they have to pray Jama'ah in their house. If they do, it's extra reward, but it's not compulsory. What's compulsory? It's compulsory that we have enough people in every different suburb or area praying Jama'ah. So once Jama'ah is established all around the city, then it's not compulsory anymore for us to pray Jama'ah. So the compulsory part is to establish Jama'ah in the city so that it's seen, it's known to everyone. It's something that everyone knows about. It's not something hidden. Once that happens, that's all that is compulsory, according to the madhab of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Now, in some prayers, other than these 5 daily prayers, Jama'ah is not even sunnah, okay? Like the sunnah prayers before and after the 5 daily prayers. We have 2 sunnah before Fajr, we have 4 before Dhuhr, 4 after Dhuhr, 4 before Asr, 2 before Maghrib, 2 after Maghrib, 2 before Isha, 2 after Isha. These sunnah prayers, they can be done in congregation, but it's not sunnah. If you do it in congregation, it's personal, but there's no special reward for doing it in congregation. In some cases, Jama'ah can be disliked. Not even sunnah, but disliked. The scholars say these cases are, there's a few cases. One of them is when you're praying your fard prayer, okay, behind someone who's making up an old prayer. So if if Hadi didn't pray Dhuhr yesterday, for example, he forgot to pray, and he decides to lead me in my Dhuhr today, then what's the ruling of that? It's disliked. I should lead Dhuhr, but not him. Okay. Praying Taraweeh behind someone who is praying Witr. Or praying Witr behind someone praying Taraweeh. It's disliked, but it's permissible to do that. Also, praying behind someone who is a person of bid'ah, a person of innovation. Someone who is known to be an innovator in religion. That's also disliked. The scholars say, for example, praying behind a Shi'i, praying behind a Mu'tazili. These are examples that are permissible. The salah is correct, inshallah, as long as the imam doesn't do anything that breaks the salah, but it's disliked. Also, repeating the Jama'ah more than once in a masjid that is not considered matruq. What's a masjid that's matruq? 90% of the mosques around the world are matruq. Matruq means basically exposed. A masjid that everyone comes and goes and prays by while they're driving, while they're passing. And a masjid that's not matruq is a masjid that would be in a suburban area that basically has a street leading to it, but no street to leave from the masjid. You have to go back from the same way that you came. So it will be in a little corner, for example, and you have to go back the same way that you came. That masjid is called غير مطروق, a masjid that is not exposed. These masajid, you shouldn't repeat Jama'ah in these masajid, and the Jama'ah should be done by the imam. But most general masajid, it's fine for us to repeat the Jama'ah in once and twice and 3 times. There's nothing wrong with that, inshallah ta'ala. Jama'ah can also be haram, not permissible, like praying 2 prayers that are not compatible. Okay? So if they're different in rak'at, it's fine. I can pray Fajr behind someone praying Maghrib. That doesn't affect the salah. But if the prayers are not compatible, means they don't match. We have the khusuf prayer, for example, eclipse prayer. In this prayer, we should do an extra ruku'. Yes? So we pray We read Quran, we go into ruku', we come up, we pray, we stand, we recite again, and then we go into ruku' again. Yeah? So we have an extra standing and extra ruku'. If you stand one extra time and do ruku' one extra time in a normal fard prayer, what happens? Your prayer is batil. It's not correct. So you can't pray Jama'ah behind someone doing that. Some scholars say another example is praying Dhuhr behind someone praying Janazah, for example. Yeah. So prayers that don't match. Janazah doesn't have any sujood, any ruku', or anything like that. But most prayers other than that can be done behind each other with details mentioned in the books of fiqh. Now, when does it become compulsory to pray Jama'ah? So we mentioned when it's permissible, when it's disliked, and when it's haram. Okay? Did we mention when it's sunnah? Okay, so of course it's sunnah in prayers like Eid and other prayers. So it becomes compulsory to pray Jama'ah when, in a few cases. Number one, when you're repeating a salah. In the Shafi'i madhab, it's sunnah to repeat your prayer if a Jama'ah starts after you've prayed. So you prayed your prayer and then a Jama'ah starts, it's sunnah to repeat your prayer. This prayer can only be done in Jama'ah. As we took in the book, Safinat al-Najah, that it's a condition, and the imam in the salah needs to intend to be an imam. He needs to intend to lead Jama'ah. So in the prayer, the prayer that you repeat can only be done in Jama'ah. So you finish your fard, it's done, and you repeat your prayer once, it's permissible, but it can only be done in Jama'ah. Also, when you bring one of the two salah forward because of rain, we're going to get to that today, inshallah ta'ala. Rain prayers is a prayer when you can bring Isha to Maghrib time, you can bring Asr to Dhuhr time. When you bring a prayer forward because of rain, it can only be done in Jama'ah. Why? Because the only reason you're allowed to bring it forward is because it's hard to get to the masjid. It's difficult to get to the masjid when it's raining. If you're praying at home, or you're not going to go to the masjid, there's no need to join your prayers just because it's raining. Just for the sake of rain. There's nothing that says that. Okay. Also, if you take an oath to pray Jama'ah, it becomes compulsory to pray Jama'ah. If there's no one else to pray Jama'ah, no one else in the city who's going to hold up the Jama'ah, then it becomes compulsory on you to do it. But if someone else is doing it, there's enough people doing Jama'ah in the city to show people and to be known that Jama'ah is going on, then you don't need to do it. Also, if there's only where that sounds coming from. Okay, subhanAllah. Anyway, interesting things happen. So, if there's not enough time to pray 4 rak'ah, to make your salah, to make even 1 rak'ah in the time of prayer, for example, okay? There's only 1 minute left and the time of prayer is going to exit, okay? It's compulsory to pray at least 1 rak'ah in the time of prayer, yes? For it to be considered prayer in the time of prayer. If the only way to make your prayer in the time of prayer is by doing ruku' with the imam, not reciting Fatiha, then it becomes compulsory to pray Jama'ah in that case. And of course, the last case when it comes compulsory is Jum'ah prayer. Jum'ah prayer is compulsory, it can only be done in Jama'ah. Okay. Who can lead in Jama'ah? Who can be the imam when it comes to Jama'ah prayer? A male can lead a male. So I didn't say a man, I'm saying a male. Any sane male. As long as they are sane in their full mind, whether they're a kid or a man, can lead any other male. So kids can lead men, men can lead kids. It's fine in the Shafi'i madhab. It's all correct, and it's the only madhab that allows that. Actually, the only madhab that allows kids to lead males is the Shafi'i madhab in the compulsory prayers. Okay. Also, a male can lead a female. Of course, that's clear that an imam would lead the females and males. Also, someone who is not clearly a male or female can be led by a male. And this person in fiqh is called a khuntha. Someone who's not clearly a male or female yet. They can be led by a male, and they can lead females, but they can't be led by females, because in this case we don't know if they're male or female. There's a possibility that they are female, so if they're leading a male, then it wouldn't be. Or they're leading someone else who could possibly be a male, then the salah would not be correct. And a female can only lead a female in Jama'ah. We took this in Sarinat al-Najah. Okay. Now, also, someone who's not able to pronounce Fatiha correctly can only lead someone who's not able to pronounce Fatiha correctly. Okay. Now, reading a surah other than Fatiha is fine. If someone makes a mistake in Ayatul Kursi, in Surah Al-Ikhlas, it doesn't affect the salah unless they do it on purpose. But in Surah Al-Fatiha, every single letter needs to be pronounced correctly. If you leave one letter out, your prayer is invalid. If you leave one shadda out, you say Iyaka, not Iyaka, your prayer is invalid. Why? Because you're leaving a whole letter out of Surah Al-Fatiha. So if someone can't pronounce Fatiha correctly, they can't say Ar-Rahman, they say Ar-Rahman or something. Yeah? If they can't say Na'budu, they say Na'budu, for example. Can they lead someone else in prayer? The only person they can lead is someone who makes a mistake in the exact same letter. So if you have someone who can't pronounce Ayn, and they want to lead someone who can pronounce Ayn but can't pronounce Qaf, it's not permissible. Why? Because each one of them are better in something. And you can't lead someone who's better at reciting Fatiha than you in Salah. So that's known as Ummi in fiqh. Someone in fiqh who's called illiterate is someone who can't recite Fatiha properly, basically. Someone with wudu can pray behind someone with tayammum. That's fine. As long as that tayammum they make is not a tayammum that requires them to repeat the prayer later on. When we studied tayammum, there's some cases when the person who makes tayammum needs to make tayammum to pray in the time of prayer, but has to repeat tayammum later on. Has to repeat the wudu later on. Tayammum in certain cases, a few cases, doesn't lift anything and doesn't even make it make salah. Basically, doesn't make salah fulfilling. In that case, they can't lead someone with a proper tahara. But most cases, tayammum, someone with tayammum can be an imam of someone who made wudu. Someone who wipes on their khuf, wipes on the basically the leather sock with the conditions that we mentioned, can lead someone who has washed their feet and vice versa. That's all fine, inshallah. Someone who's done the conditions of salah correctly can lead anyone else who has the same conditions of salah. The last important thing in Jama'ah is praying with a distance between you and the imam. This is very important. Okay. So the details of this is mentioned in long books of fiqh, and there's a lot of actually arguments and difference inside the madhab in some tiny details, but the general rules that you have to understand are pretty clear, inshallah ta'ala. Inside the masjid, first case is if you and the imam are both inside the same masjid. Okay, what's a masjid? A masjid is what people consider a masjid. Masjid is what is built to be a masjid. When they built it, they say this is a masjid. Okay, it's not owned by anyone. It's not a musalla. It's not a hall. Yeah, it's a masjid. If you and the imam are in the same masjid, the same premises, okay, and the premises is a masjid, then you can pray anywhere, and the imam can pray anywhere as long as he's in front of you. You can have 10 kilometers between you and the imam, and it's permissible, as long as you are both in the same masjid. So the only two conditions you have to know are that you can't be in front of the imam, and number two, that you don't start prayer in an area where it's impossible to reach the imam. If, for example, the ladies are upstairs, okay, and they can't reach the imam, and there's no stairs that take them to the imam. The stairs fell down, for example, okay, and they're trapped in there forever. In that case, they can't pray behind the imam because it's impossible to get to the imam. They're not really connected. But if they're able to reach the imam, even by giving the back to the qibla, even by going downstairs and walking around, then their prayer is permissible as long as it's in the same masjid. So there's no hard conditions when you're both in the masjid. You can pray anywhere. You don't have to be in the line, the saf. You don't have to be close to the imam. You don't have to do any of that. All of these are sunnah, but the only compulsory part is to be in the masjid if you want to pray Jama'ah. That's it. Okay.
So what if in a masjid there's different parts, different rooms of that same masjid?
Yeah, so if we consider, so if they're all in the masjid, yeah, like a ladies' area and men's area, for example, it's permissible as long as they're in the same masjid. As long as they're in the same masjid. So even if the masjid has more than one room, as long as those rooms are part of the masjid, they're not separate parts, separate buildings, then it's okay, inshallah ta'ala, to pray in separate rooms.
What about the haram? In the haram in Mecca,
Haram, for example.
place the imam prays behind?
Yeah. So in our madhab, if the imam is behind you, you can't pray behind the imam. If the imam is behind you, you can't pray behind him. Why? Because he needs to be in front of you to be an imam. He has to be in front of you. That's the only condition you have to worry about. To be behind the imam, not in front of the imam. So if you're praying in Mecca, make sure that you know where the imam is praying. Some cases they pray right in front of the Kaaba, that's clear. And sometimes they pray under the shade. Okay? For me, when I don't know, I just pray behind the shade. I make sure that I'm not praying anywhere in front of the shade if I don't know where the imam is, and that way your prayer is correct, inshallah. Now, if you're praying janazah prayer in the haram, okay, so it's not as important as the 5 daily prayers. Sometimes the imam goes very far behind. He walks to the back of the mosque, okay? In this case, you can follow the Maliki madhab, which says that imam can be behind you. In this case, you can follow the Maliki madhab, which says the imam can be behind you. But generally, try to be behind the imam, because this is the opinion of all the other madhab and all the other opinions in Islam, that the imam has to be in front of you and you can't be in front of the imam. Okay. So if you're in the masjid, just pray inside the masjid and don't worry about anything else, basically. Yes?
Is the car park considered masjid?
We'll get to that, inshallah. Okay, so we'll get to outside the masjid, but in the building, if you're in the building, that's what we're talking about now. In the same building, then alhamdulillah, you don't have to worry about being close or far away from the imam. If you were praying outside the masjid, okay. Actually, before we talk about this, if you're both in the masjid, that's the ruling. If one of you is in the masjid and the other is outside the masjid, okay, then the same ruling we mentioned when you're both outside the masjid is mentioned. The person who's outside the masjid has to go by what I mentioned now, which is not to have more than 300 arm lengths between them and the masjid. If you're both outside the masjid, you can't have more than 300 arm lengths between you and the imam, or between you and the line behind the imam. So if we have 20 lines, and every line is 200 arm lengths, has a 200 arm length gap between them, then salah is fine. As long as we don't go over 300 arm lengths between us and the person in front of us, whether that person is the imam or a follower of the imam. And that's why in our method they say it's possible that someone can pray Jama'ah from Baghdad to Mecca with the imam in Mecca. How? You have every 200 meters, you have one person standing there until you reach Baghdad. Salat Jama'ah will be correct, yeah, as long as you know what the imam is doing. Someone is repeating after the imam al-lam so that you know what they're doing. Your salah is correct, as long as you know and you're able to know what he's doing. That's the condition in all cases. You have to know what the imam is doing. So outside the masjid, if you're outside the masjid, please everyone can mute the voice. If you're outside the masjid, don't have more than 300 arm lengths between you and the masjid. Okay? If you're both outside the masjid, don't have more than 300 arm lengths between you and between the other person. That's the main thing to focus on when talking about Jama'ah. Generally, if you have that length and there's no barrier. The second condition is there's no barrier between you and between the person in front of you or the imam, whoever you're praying behind. If there's a barrier, a physical barrier that you can't cross, then it's not permissible to pray behind the person. So, for example, in our madhab, is it permissible to pray in the clock tower behind the haram, upstairs? You know, in the videos we see people praying, following Kaaba, following the prayer in the haram in their room. Is that permissible? Who says yes? It's not permissible in our madhab. Why not? Because you are outside the masjid. Okay? When you are outside the masjid,
isn't all of Mecca isn't that
no, it has to be the masjid. You're considered outside the masjid. When you're outside the masjid, you have to not have a barrier between you and the imam. What does a barrier mean? It means you can walk straight up to the imam or the person behind the imam. There's a straight open space between you and between the Jama'ah. You don't have to give your back to the Qibla. If there's a barrier stopping you from doing that, then you can't pray. That's why they say, if the masjid is full, what do? We need to open the doors of the masjid so that the people behind us can pray and have their prayer to be correct. Open the doors of the masjid. So there's space for them to walk, if they want to walk to the masjid. But if we lock the masjid, in many cases, overseas, they lock the masjid doors when it's packed, and they say everyone pray outside. Then in our madhab, it's not correct. You can't do that. Yes?
someone saying
Can you explain the dot point where it says another condition that you possibly reach so you know if you want? Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, the second one or the first one?
The first one.
So if you're inside the masjid, you have to be able to reach the imam, even if it means that you're giving your back to the qibla. So if you're upstairs and there's a staircase that takes you back down to the imam, then you can walk downstairs, okay? That means you're connected. So inside the masjid, as long as you can reach the imam, even by giving your back to the qibla, your prayer is correct. Outside the masjid, the condition is that you don't give your back to the qibla. You don't give your back to the qibla. There has to be an open space in front of you to reach the imam. So if we're praying in different buildings, for example, yeah, there has to be an open space between us. We can't just have our doors closed and pray on the radio. I remember in Corona, many people wanted to pray online. Yeah, that's very dangerous. No matter allows that, for example.
so following on the parking lot question, do you have to keep the doors open to be able to pray in the parking lot, or is that considered part of the masjid?
So the parking lot is usually considered what they call harim al-masjid. Not part of the masjid, but it follows the masjid, meaning that someone with major impurity can't enter and stuff like that. But it's not part of the masjid itself. So depending really on the masjid, but usually generally that's the ruling of the parking lot. So outside the masjid, make sure that we have an open space between us and between the Jama'ah, whether it's the imam or the follower of the imam. Once there's a follower who connects your salah with the imam, it's fine. Once there's someone who connects you and the imam, it's like you're having a separate imam, and that's fine. Okay. Alright, that's the last thing in this section, inshallah, so I'll answer questions now. There's a question in the group that says, what if the imam who pronounces the Fatiha incorrectly does it during a silent prayer? Okay. If you are sure, 100% sure that in the silent prayer he's not reciting Fatiha correctly, you can't pray behind him. But if you don't know, okay, if you're praying behind someone and you don't know that they made a mistake in Fatiha, then that's not on you. If you think they're praying and their prayer is correct, inshallah ta'ala, they're an imam, and you don't know, and they made a mistake quietly, then it's up to you to know that, inshallah ta'ala. But if you know, if you're sure, if you know that they're not reciting Fatiha correctly, then you can't pray behind them. If they are outside the bound of the masjid due to the capacity, is Jama'ah valid? It's valid as long as there's some connection, or the doors are open, like I said, and we're not basically cut off from the Jama'ah, like I just explained. Is the reward of Jama'ah the same for a male imam if he leads only females? For example, leading female family members at a home. So inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him whether he leads males or females, but then inshallah he will get reward inshallah ta'ala. Okay, any questions here?
If you come a bit late and there's people that try to make up the prayer after the Imam
Yes.
finished, do you join them or make a new one?
Okay, so in our madhab, if you know there's going to be a new Jama'ah starting, yeah, and the masjid is a masjid that you can repeat the Jama'ah in, then it's better to wait for a second Jama'ah. If you're not going to make a second Jama'ah, there's not going to be a second Jama'ah, then you can join anyone and you can pray with them, inshallah ta'ala. But it's better to start fresh, to start with a new Jama'ah from Takbiratul Ihram if you can. That's the best thing to do. So if you can make the Jama'ah from the start, wait. Even if the Imam is in his prayer and you see a group of people coming and you know that you're going to start the Jama'ah from the beginning with them, it's better to wait for them. It's better to wait for them because you make Jama'ah from the start of prayer.
And so you pray in Sunnah, someone wants to join, you let them know that we're praying Sunnah, but they still pray behind you.
In our method, it's fine to lead. If you're praying Sunnah, to lead someone praying Fard, that's okay. That's fine.
Do they get the reward of
Yes,
Sunnah?
yes. Inshallah. Okay, that's it? Okay, inshallah. The next part is the prayer of a traveler. The prayer of a traveler. Abu Shujā rahimahullah ta'ala says, فصل ويجوز للمسافر قصر الصلاة الرباعية ب5 شرائط. أن يكون سفره في غير معصية، وأن تكون مسافته 16 فرسخا، وأن يكون مؤديا للصلاة الرباعية، وأن ينوي القصر مع الإحرام، وأن لا يأتم بمقيم. ويجوز للمسافر أن يجمع بين الظهر والعصر في وقت أيهما شاء، وبين المغرب والعشاء في وقت أيهما شاء. ويجوز للحاضر في المطر أن يجمع بينهما في وقت الأولى منهما.
Travelers are entitled to shorten prayers consisting of 4 rak'ah to 2 rak'ah, provided that 5 conditions are met. A. The journey itself does not entail disobedience. B. The distance of the journey be at least 16 farsakh, approximately 50 miles or 81 kilometers. C. The prayers being performed normally consist of 4 rak'ah. D. The intention to shorten the prayer is concurrent with the opening Allahu Akbar. And E. The one shortening prayers does not follow a resident or a traveler who is not shortening prayer in prayer. Combining. Travelers are entitled to combine, number 1, the noon and mid-afternoon prayers during either of the 2 times one chooses.
Today, mashallah, a lot of interesting things.
Travelers are entitled to combine, number 2, the sunset and night prayers during either of the 2 times one chooses. Residents are entitled to combine the 2 sets of prayers during the time, the first of them when there is rain.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So, shortening prayers and then combining prayers. 2 important things that happen to every Muslim, especially when they're traveling. Now, let's get into it, inshallah. What prayers can be shortened? Okay, the only prayers that can be shortened are 4 rak'ah to 2 rak'ah. Can we pray Maghrib 1.5 rak'ah? Is that permissible? Okay, I know of someone who did that. Yeah, so there was Maghrib, they said, you know what, I'm going to make it ijtihad, and they prayed 1.5 rak'ah. So, like at ruku' time, they just stopped their prayer. SubhanAllah. Anyway, so we can only pray shorten 4 rak'ah to 2. 4 to 2. Other than that, you can't shorten on salah. Shortening of prayers can only happen in travel. Can only happen in travel. There's no other reason to shorten prayers. You can combine for other reasons. But to shorten, it can only be if you're traveling. No other reason to shorten your prayers. So, if someone from Mecca is making Hajj, from Mecca, can they shorten prayers in Mina? In Arafat? They're from Mecca, yeah? They live close to these areas. It's not a trouble for them. Can't shorten their prayers, even in Hajj. The only reason is if you're traveling. So you're not in your city. You're far away, you've left. In that case, you can shorten your prayers. Okay. Like I said, in Hajj, the same thing applies. Many people go to Hajj from Mecca, from close areas, and they shorten their prayers in Hajj, not noticing that you need to be a traveler. You need to be a traveler. Okay. Also, if someone stays in Mecca for a few months, they're not from Mecca, but they stay in Mecca more than 4 days, they become a muqim. They become someone who is not a traveler anymore, in that case they also can't shorten their prayers, yeah? Up more than 4 days, over 4 days. So we'll get to that inshallah ta'ala. So you have to be a traveler if you want to shorten your prayers. Combining your prayers has other reasons, inshallah ta'ala, we'll get to. Now, it's encouraged to shorten your prayers. What's the ruling of shortening your prayers? It's encouraged. It's sunnah as long as there's no difference in shortening it. For example, in some cases, there will be a difference between the scholars if you can shorten this certain prayer or not. Abu Hanifa, he says that the distance of traveling is longer than the other madhabs. His distance that he gives is longer than the rest of the madhabs. So until you reach that distance, it's only a little bit more, a small amount more, it's not encouraged to shorten your prayers. Once you reach a distance where all the scholars agree that you can shorten your prayers, it becomes encouraged. It becomes sunnah to do so. Because Prophet ﷺ used to always shorten his prayers in travel. He didn't always combine them, but he would always shorten them. Okay. What are the conditions of shortening? Let's get into them inshallah. Number 1, that it's done in the state of safar, the state of traveling. So even if I start to shorten my prayer, okay, while I am traveling, and then I reach my hometown, okay, I'm not a traveler anymore. My travel ends while I'm in salah. How would that happen? If you're on the train, for example, and then the train stops and you reach your city. What do you have to do? You're in the second rak'ah of dhuhr. You have to continue and pray 4. Why? Because you're not a traveler anymore. So you have to be a traveler in the whole entire prayer. For the whole entire prayer, you have to be a traveler if you want to shorten your prayers. The second condition is that your trip itself is considered long, over 2 marhalas. Now, we can start to shorten our prayers after we leave the city that we are in. As long as our travel itself from the end of our city to the destination, to the city we're going to go to, is that long. When do we start to shorten? The moment we leave our city. You don't have to travel for an hour or 2, no. As long as the travel itself that you are doing is going to be that long. You intend to travel that far. That's the condition. So 2 marhalas are, this is what's mentioned in the books of fiqh. What is 2 marhalas? The modern scholars differ a lot. The translator, he said 81 Ks. I think the opinion mentioned here that Allama Ahmad Bik al-Husayni mentioned is that it's around 90 kilometers, is a little bit more accurate inshallah ta'ala. And some scholars go even beyond that and say it's over 100, over 120, there's different opinions. But generally, if you're not traveling over 80 kilometers, then you would not be recommended to shorten your prayers because most scholars say that is not a travel. That's not considered a travel. Okay. The third condition is that the travel you are doing, the trip you are taking is not haram. If someone travels for the intention to buy something haram, to go and buy alcohol. Yeah? In Saudi, for example, a lot of people travel to Bahrain to buy alcohol because they don't sell alcohol in Saudi, yeah? So they go to Bahrain for that reason. That travel is haram. You can't shorten your prayers, you can't break fast in Ramadan, you can't do anything like that. You can't wipe over your khuf for 3 days, you can't do those things. Why? Because it's haram. All these special conditions or special rulings for a traveler don't apply to this person because the travel itself is haram. Okay. The fourth condition is to intend shortening while making takbirat al-ihram. How do you do that? You intend to pray dhuhr 2 rak'ah, for example. Or you can intend to shorten, to pray the shortened dhuhr. But that's pretty hard. So in that is just to intend the number of rak'ah that you're praying. You say that I pray dhuhr 2 rak'ah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example. That's permissible.
Does that include the follower as well as the imam?
Whoever's shortening, yeah?
Yeah.
Whoever is shortening them. If you're praying alone, then yourself. If you're praying behind an imam, of course the imam has to also be shortening your prayer. You can't pray short prayer behind an imam who's not praying short. We'll get to that inshallah ta'ala. Okay, for the travel, like I said, to continue for the entire duration of salah. The whole prayer has to be inside the state of traveling. If you reach your city while you're praying, you have to complete your prayer, khalas. Okay, or if you start to shorten your prayer just before you left your city, so you're on the train, for example, and the train starts from the end of your city. You start to pray Dhuhr just before you leave your city. You have to pray 4 rak'ah. You can't complete. But if you wait and you don't start to pray until the train's left your city, then you can pray 2 rak'ah. Even if Dhuhr time started while you were in your city, you can still shorten your prayer. So you don't have to be out of the city when the prayer time starts. That's not a condition. As long as you start your prayer while you're traveling. That's the condition. After you've left your city. Okay. Also, for you to not follow someone who's not shortening their prayer, any part of your prayer. So if the Imam is not shortening the prayer, you can't pray behind him and shorten your prayer. If the Imam is praying 4 rak'ah, you have to pray 4 rak'ah. If the Imam is praying Fajr and you're praying Dhuhr that you missed, 2 rak'ah, can you pray behind him? You can't. Why? Because he's not shortening his prayer. So even if the prayer is only 2 rak'ah and you're praying 2 which are Dhuhr, not Fajr, you still can't pray behind him because he's not shortening his prayer. And for you to be traveling to a certain destination. So if someone, I'll just finish this inshallah ta'ala. If someone, for example, doesn't know where they're traveling, okay? They had an argument, they got upset, or they got rejected and they just started to walk off. You know, Bismillah, just walk off in the middle of nowhere. Can they shorten their prayers and break fast during Ramadan? They can't do any of that. Why? In Arabic they call this al-ha'im. Al-ha'im. Yeah? What's al-ha'im mean? Someone who's lost. Someone who doesn't know where they're going. This person, they say, cannot shorten his prayers and he can't do any of this because it's not considered a traveler. He doesn't know how long he's traveling, where he's traveling to. He's just walking around. Okay. Inshallah, any questions in shortening your prayer?
Sheikh, do you have to be sure that the Imam is shortening the prayer? Say, if you're going to pray in congregation, but then the Imam is in that.
So in most cases, you have to be sure the Imam is shortening his prayer. In most cases, okay? And there's only one case where you can pray when you're not sure, and that is if the Imam is a traveler. You know, you're traveling with the group and the Imam is traveling with you. Okay, the Imam seems to be someone who's traveling. So most likely it's going to be what? He's going to be shortening his prayer. But you're not sure of his intention. Okay? In this case, you can intend in your takbir that if he shortens, I will shorten, and if he continues, I will continue. In this one case only. Okay? But generally, you have to be sure. So if you're traveling, you're from Melbourne, for example, and you're traveling through Melbourne, you're shortening your prayers in Melbourne. You go to a normal masjid, okay? The possibility the Imam is going to be shortening his prayers is 1 over 1,000, yeah? You don't pray behind him if you're not shortening your prayers. Any other questions?
There's many questions there, but they're not related. They're from previous.
Okay, well, at the end, inshallah, if I have time, we'll answer them, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, what about combining? So that's all that we have to study, inshallah, regarding shortening your prayer. What about combining prayers? So, which prayers can be combined? Number 1, traveling prayers can be combined, like shortening, same thing. Number 2, prayers when it's raining, if prayed in congregation, like we said. Number 3, some scholars say that when someone is sick, they can also combine their prayers, and this is the opinion of Imam An-Nawawi, although it's not the mu'tamad opinion in the madhab. It's not the famous opinion in the madhab, but it is an opinion that someone can take if they need to. Okay. Combining can be done between Dhuhr and Asr in the time of Dhuhr, or Dhuhr and Asr in the time of Asr. Maghrib and Isha in the time of Maghrib, Maghrib and Isha in the time of Isha. So there's 2 types of combining. Bringing one of the 2 prayers forward, or delaying one of the 2 prayers. These are all different types of combining. It's called ta'khir and taqdeem. Ta'khir and taqdeem. Taqdeem is to bring forward and ta'khir is to delay. Okay. Each one has different conditions. If you're bringing your prayers forward and you are traveling, so let's talk about traveling because it's the main case where people bring their prayers forward. The conditions to bring your prayer forward, okay, number 1 is to begin with the first one, the first salah. If you're bringing your prayer forward, can you pray Asr first, then Dhuhr? No, you have to pray in order if you're bringing your prayers forward. That's the first condition. So you pray Dhuhr first, and then you pray Asr. Number 2, to intend to combine while you are in the first salah. While you're in the first salah. So while you're in Dhuhr, you have to intend to bring Asr forward. Does it have to be in Takbiratul Ihram? It can be anywhere inside Dhuhr. And even just before you make Salam. Even just before you make Salam. So in your tashahhud, you say, you know what? Let me pray Asr as well. khalas, you can do that. Right? As long as you don't change your intention after salah, after your salam. If you make salam and then decide not to shorten, and then you want to shorten again, okay, then that's when the scholars, especially if you're in asr, then you change your intention, you can't do that. But if you intend while you're in dhuhr prayer, okay, then it's fine and it's permissible to bring asr forward. And that's all you have to do, intend while you're in dhuhr. If you're bringing isha forward, intend while you're in maghrib. That's it. That's all you have to do. Okay. The third condition is to not have a long gap between the two prayers. Not have a long gap between the two prayers. They say a short gap would be like making wudu, making tayammum, okay, small things like that. And a long gap would be like praying 2 rak'ah, praying a whole prayer. Because if you shorten your prayers, it should be only 2 rak'ah. So you're leaving the gap of a whole entire prayer. That's considered missing the chance of shortening your prayer. So they say 2 rak'ah, 2 short rak'ah, just reciting the minimum in them, is the maximum gap that you can leave between 2 prayers that you are combining. If you're going to bring one of them forward. If you're delaying, we'll talk about it later on, inshallah. Okay. And the last condition is that the reason of combining your prayers is still there when you start the second prayer. It's still there when you start the second prayer. Like what? For example, you're traveling and you start asr while you are traveling. Khalas. Alhamdulillah, your asr is correct. Yeah? But if you stop traveling just before you begin to pray asr, you can't combine your prayers, for example. Okay. What about delaying your prayers? It's very simple. There's 2 conditions. To intend before the end of the time of the first prayer. So if I'm in dhuhr time from 12:30 to 3:30, now you can intend to combine your prayers, delay dhuhr at 3:20. It's fine. There's no sin on you. But if you wait till 3:30 and then you decide to combine your prayers, you'll be sinful. Is your dhuhr still correct? It's correct. Yeah? But you'll be sinful. So this is a condition to not be sinful. Number 2, for the reason of combining to be there in both prayers. For example, you're traveling and you delay your prayer because you're traveling and you're still traveling when you pray asr. What if I delay dhuhr to asr time, but I reach my hometown before I've prayed dhuhr? Is it possible to do so?
You can't shorten them.
No, I'm talking about combining it, you know.
Yeah, you can combine them.
It's permissible, but it's not called combining. It's not called combining. It's called qada. It's called qada. It's not ada anymore, but it's qada la ithma fi. It's qada without sin. So it's not called combining anymore. It's called qada, but there's no sin on it. So these 2 conditions are not really conditions. These are just conditions for it to be considered combining and not to be considered delaying your prayer. That's what it is. Okay. The last thing here is combining prayers when it's raining. So, combining prayers when it's raining is specific to bringing prayers forward, not delaying prayers. You can't delay prayer because of rain. You can only bring them forward. Now, the conditions of this are the same as the conditions of bringing prayers forward when you're traveling. The same conditions apply. There's an extra condition which is for it to be raining. At the time of the beginning of your first prayer, at the time of salam when you end your first prayer, between both prayers and at the beginning of your second prayer. If it stops in between, it's fine. If it stops after you start your second prayer, yeah, it's fine. But in these 4 times, there has to be rain going on. Also, combining can only be done if the beginning of the second prayer is done in Jama'ah. So if I pray the first prayer alone, I pray dhuhr alone, I can still combine asr with dhuhr, but asr has to be done in Jama'ah. Why? Because the reason you combine is because it's hard to get to the Jama'ah twice, to walk to the Jama'ah twice. And that's why it's possible to combine your prayer. rain must be enough to get the clothes wet and the bottom of your shoes. So it doesn't have to be heavy rain, it can be a light rain. Yeah. Also, combining prayers can only be done in a place of congregation, in the masjid, the musalla, for example. Yeah, but it can't be done at home. Somewhere where people have to walk. There's a distance. It's hard for them to get there. Then they combine the prayers so that they don't have to walk all that way to the next salah. Also, someone walks under a covered area. Yeah, they live in a compound, for example, and there's all covered areas, shelter. They can't combine their prayers. Why? Because it's not hard for them to walk to the next prayer. It's easy. Other than rain, is treated like rain, like heavy hail or snow, or just rooftops pouring water. That's the same, but it has to also be there at the times that we mentioned. It has to have the same conditions as rain prayer. That's generally the conditions of combining for rain prayer. Inshallah, I really hope we have time to go over Jama'ah, if possible. Is there any important questions?
And with the tahir prayer, you could pray in any order.
Yes, it's important to notice this, that when you delay your prayers, you have to pray in order. If I delay Dhuhr to the time of Asr, do I have to pray Dhuhr first, then Asr? No, you can do whatever you want. If you delay, there's no order.
Is there a preferred order? Like
Yeah, of course, it's better to pray Dhuhr first, because the majority of madhahib say that it's conditioned. Imam Ahmad and others. But it's permissible to pray Asr first, even before you pray Dhuhr. So when you delay your prayers, you can do it in any order you want. Khalas, it's fine. That's a very important thing. Jazakumullah khairan. Okay, so Jumu'ah. Those questions about. Okay. MashaAllah. Yeah, khalas. We'll just read the questions. Those questions, inshallah. We'll stop at Jumu'ah, inshallah. Okay, so one question here says, if I'm praying Jumu'ah prayer and the Imam is on the last tashahhud and I break my wudu, and I have to go make wudu again, but by the time I come back to the prayer the Imam has finished, can I pray 2 rak'ah assuming I was present during khutbah? No, you can't. Okay. You can't do that, of course. If you have combined your prayer and the Jama'ah starts, can you join and make, if you combine your prayers and the Jama'ah starts, can you join and make intention for a qada prayer? The Imam starts Maghrib prayer and you intention, it's fine. You can pray qada behind an Imam who's praying the current prayer. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Another question says, if the doors are open but there's a curtain on the door because the one part of masjid is air conditioned and the other is not. So I don't know what you mean by curtain. I have to see basically the picture to make a judgment on this question. How does Sharia define a city? That's a beautiful question. Okay. When you're traveling, the scholars say there's 2 types of cities. One is an area that has a wall surrounding it. Is there any cities like that now, today? Very rare, yeah? There's a wall surrounding the city. There's something built around the city, okay? In the the time of the author and other scholars, this was the norm. Most cities had something surrounding it, a wall around it, and that would be the outskirts of the city. So once you pass the wall, you can start to shorten your prayers. Once you pass the wall, you can start to combine your prayers. Once you pass the wall, if you're wiping on your khuf, you can do for 3 days. If the city doesn't have a wall, which is the state of most cities today, the outskirts of the city are defined by the houses and buildings of the city. So if I'm leaving Melbourne, for example, say I leave through the west of Melbourne, Tani or wherever, for example, once there's no more houses anymore, okay? People don't consider that you're in Melbourne anymore. It seems like you left the town, that's when you can start to shorten your prayers. Once the houses end, there's no more buildings. You can see the buildings behind you, but left to your right and left there's nothing. That's when you can start to shorten and combine your prayers. So if there's a wall, it's considered by the wall. If there's houses and buildings, then once you pass the houses and buildings of the city. Should one break their prayer when they are sure of a mistake in Al-Fatiha or continue then repeat. I find breaking in some cases can cause fitna. Okay. If the question is about the Imam making a mistake in Fatiha, so you're praying behind the Imam, and the Imam makes a mistake in Surah Al-Fatiha. You're praying behind someone, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and then all of a sudden they say, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. What do you do? In this case, the simplest option is to intend to cut yourself off from the Imam. Intend to be munfarid. Intend to not follow the Imam anymore. What do you do? Intend to not be a follower of the Imam anymore.
So can you change your intention?
Yes. Inside prayer you can change your intention while you're in prayer. And your prayer is valid. Why is this permissible? Because your prayer isn't invalid just because you made a mistake. When does your prayer become invalid? If you go into ruku' with him. Yeah? If you miss Fatiha because of him. But you're still in the situation where the Imam, if you repeated Fatiha correctly, his prayer will be correct. So you still have the chance to cut yourself off from the Imam and continue alone. And your prayer will be permissible. So if you do that, you can extend your prayer, make your prayer long, so that it doesn't seem like you're not praying behind the Imam. You don't cause any fitna in that case, if you need to. Also, so that's the easiest thing. But if the question is understood a different way, which is, should one break their prayer when they're sure of a mistake in Fatiha, their own mistake? No, if you make a mistake in Fatiha, you just correct yourself and your Fatiha is fine.
Repeat the ayah.
So you repeat the ayah, or it depends if there's a long gap and stuff, then you can start and start again. But you just correct yourself and your salah is correct, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, any other questions? That's instead of cutting your prayer from the Imam, if he makes a mistake, can you also correct him? If correcting the Imam is going to help, if he can fix his Fatiha, then correct him. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as he can respond. But if he doesn't respond, if you correct him and he still makes a mistake, then khalas. Just cut yourself off the Imam and your prayer will be correct, inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala. Okay, any other questions?
Knowing that, when you want to bring your prayer forward, and you know that you're going to say by the time of Asr, you're going to make it back to city.
Yes.
Is it permissible to bring
before Asr enters or after Asr enters?
Before Asr enters.
Look, if you are going to, so if Asr time is going to enter while you are traveling, there's enough time for you to pray Asr while you are traveling, then khalas, you can bring your prayer forward, yeah? But if you're going to enter your city after the time of Asr before the time of Asr has entered, then why would you combine your prayers? You can pray Asr in its time. Yeah? Okay, inshallah. That's it for today. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa akbar. Inshallah, we'll start with Jama'ah next week. I was excited to finish Jama'ah, but I think I was a bit over-optimistic, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we'll pray Asr together, inshallah, in a few minutes.
So does it have to be say if it's something like everyday thing for work, someone traveling?
Yeah.
Is that a valid thing?
So if you're traveling every day or every other day,
Yeah.
even if you travel, there's nothing wrong. You can still find your place.
طب السؤال الاولاني بتاع الفندق الحرم، لو انت قاعده في فندق في الحرم، طب هو في نطاق الحرم.
ايوه في
طب
فقهاء
لو انت بتصلي
في فقهاء بيجيزوا، في فقهاء
المسجد
بيجيزوا،
بتاع
هو
المسجد
يعني مش رأي واحد.